Welcome, here's how to start a game company in 7 simple steps. So after reading this article, after watching this video, here's what you're going to learn. You're going to learn how to get publishers to approach you so that you get funding and don't have to worry about any budgets. Also, you'll learn how to get players to find you and want to join your community. You also learn how to build an audience that will support your current game and your future games. You'll also learn how to market research your game idea so that you know your game will make profits when you launch and not waste 2 years or more on a game that people don't buy. Also, in this video, you're going to learn how to identify market opportunities so that you're not in an oversaturated market and make your market efforts go a lot easier. Also, you'll learn how to make a game that sells itself so that players come to you and you don't have to, go out there and look for them. Also, you'll learn how to have a successful game launch and make enough profits to fund your next game project. That's the goal in this video. Also, as a bonus, you'll get a blueprint that will walk you through this guide step by step and make it a lot easier for you to implement what you're about to learn. So if you're a game dev and you're developing a commercial game for the purpose of building a profitable game studio, then here's what you need to know. My name is Darius, and I know exactly what it's like to have a full-time job, to go home and work on projects in the evening only to see nothing of it, right? I know what it's like to work hard for 4 years and feel like crap because I made no income. And I know how it feels like to be inexperienced in business, and I know what it feels like to basically fail, right? But I figured it out. In 2006, I had a breakthrough, and since 2006, I've learned business strategies such as market research, product planning, digital marketing, building communities, and launching digital products. And I've had 3 successful startups doing creative work that have supported me and my family financially, right? But this isn't about me. This is about you and how to start a profitable game studio. So let's talk about that. So let me use my 17 plus years experience in starting successful game companies and show you exactly how to grow your game studio in 7 simple steps. So the first thing I want to talk about is why games fail. So most games fail because they were created by somebody who had no idea what the market wanted, and they blindly created what they wanted. And when we create what we want without knowing what the market wants, then we have to, talk someone into buying it. We have to, sell our idea. We have to, convince people to buy it. But the game devs who succeeded, mixed a little bit of both. They made a game that they wanted to make, and they also matched that to what the market wanted. And instead of trying to, talk a player into buying your game, and instead of trying to sell or, hard market your game, if you make a game that the market wants, then all you have to do, is basically show it to them. This is essentially, how to make a game that sells itself. Second, let's talk about what to look out for in this guide. Okay, the following steps in this guide are designed to be easy to follow, and you'll get a simple, roadmap to follow. And I can honestly say that this is the best business and marketing strategy guide made specifically for game devs who have no idea how to start a game company. And even though my goal is to help you and your game studio to grow and become profitable, this is not how to get rich quick. You have to work your ass off, and it takes time, and nothing in business is guaranteed, and there's a lot of risk involved. So even though, these techniques are easy to execute, and these are, the business strategies and marketing strategies that worked for me, you are still responsible for your own work ethic and your effort, right? So what I want you to look out for are ideas, techniques, insights, and action plans that you think will work for you, right? And I promise that if you put an honest effort into making these steps and executing, what you learn in real life, then your game studio, will grow. So if you want tangible results, like 1,000 Discord followers or find a publisher to fund your game, then that all depends on your willingness to work hard and execute the ideas I'm about to show you. Okay, are you ready? So grab your favorite drink and, get comfy, turn off your notifications on your phone, and let's learn how to start a successful game company. Okay, so step 1 is to market research to discover if there's any demand for your game idea. So if you want to start a game studio that makes, enough profits so that it supports you financially, then there's no way of getting around it. There's no way, avoiding it, but you need to do some market research before you do anything else. And remember, most games fail because the person didn't take the time to find out if there was even a market for it, right? So the reason why we need to do market research before anything else is if you get the market wrong, then nothing's going to help you. So no amount of marketing, PR, branding, YouTuber influence, and convincing player, how innovative or unique your game is, it's not going to work. And if you get your market wrong, then you will waste, months and years on a game that will probably not sell, right? And of course, you can accidentally find the right market. For example, look at Vampire Survivors. No amount of market research, could have, predicted that huge success. And of course, this is a dream outcome, right? The dream is to make a game, and despite all odds, and no matter how saturated the market is, the game still sells millions, and players and YouTubers spread of word of mouth for free, basically giving you easy marketing. But accidentally finding, the right market and banking on YouTubers to spread free marketing for you is too much of a gamble, and you don't want to bet your entire future or your game studio on basically hope and on gambling, right? So instead of hope, a better strategy is to deliberately find hidden markets that have high income potential. And so how do you do this? Well, you've probably seen me talk about this before, or maybe other people talk about this too, but the best resource is to use this tool, and it's basically a website called games-stats.com, and I'll show you, in the link below where to get to that website. But what you want to look out for is low game count and high revenue income. So when you search for your game, you want to look for low game count and high revenue income. So the reason is this will tell you how saturated your potential market is and how much potential income you could make. So for example, let's look at bullet hell as an example for me, right? So the bullet hell market. So you'll see that image here beside me. But as you can see, with over 3,000 games made, this genre is oversaturated, and with only $650 in revenue medium, there's not a lot of games that were sold. But let's look at another market that has high income potential. So I did some quick research, and I found that the roguelike deck builder is basically another story, right? With under 400 games made, this tells me that the genre is not oversaturated, and with over $11,000 revenue medium, this tells me players are buying games like this, and they probably want more. There seems to be a big demand for this. But even though I'm doing this research, I'm not done yet, right? Here's how to find hidden opportunities. What if I were to incorporate roguelike deck building into my bullet hell? Maybe I can come up with a unique and innovative game that people don't know that they want yet, right? And I can maybe potentially uncover a new opportunity that no other game dev is thinking of doing. Would it work? Maybe, but I can't get too excited. It would be a major mistake. It would be a horrible idea, to spend the next 6 months in production working on my bullet hell roguelike deck building game. I could waste my time, and because what I think is a good idea, the market might not, right? So remember, the number one reason why games fail is because the developer made a game that they wanted to make, but never considered it, or never considered if that's what the market wanted. So before you or I, start actual production, we still need to do this. And that's step number 2. And that is identify hidden opportunities in your market by talking to players. So as you progress through these steps, you are learning how to build a game that sells itself. And the goal isn't, to make a copycat game. The idea is to make a game that, creates a new category, a new genre, and basically dominates it. So think Dark Souls, Vampire Survivors, roguelike, Doom, Dear Esther. You can argue that, these games didn't invent their genres, but at least you can say they popularized the genre or the market. So anyway, my other goal here so far is to make sure that you get the genre and market right before you go into full production mode. And this is important because remember, most game studios fail because they got the market wrong. They got their genre wrong. And I get it. It's very tempting, to start production as soon as you can, or, at least start a prototype. But the more time you spend in pre-production and validating your ideas, the better chances your idea will be a success. And you're doing all this work right now that will dramatically increase the chances of players finding you, following you, and buying your game at launch. So let's go back to my example. I did my research, I found a potential opportunity, the bullet hell market, with the roguelike deck building, putting those together. But it would be a big mistake to start production right now because I still need to test my ideas out with real people. I need to validate my idea. So why do I need to validate my idea? Because I want to see if there's a hidden opportunity that no other game dev has thought of before. And I want to see if there's any demand for my game idea. I want, my game to break out and sell itself. So there's two ways to find if there's any hidden opportunities in your potential market. So the first way is to find all the games that are similar to yours and read the player, reviews. So in my case, I would go and find, deck or roguelike deck building genres such as, Slay the Spire, Monster Train, Book of Demons, Hand of Fate, and etc. Right? And then I go to the Steam page and basically read the reviews. And I do the same for Bullet Hell, right? I'd read reviews for games like, Risk of Rain, Vampire Survivors, and even like Nova Drift, games like that. So what I'm looking for are what problems people are having in that genre. I'm looking for frustrations. I'm looking for challenges. I'm looking for pain points. And the reason why I'm looking for, any challenges or problems or pain points in that genre is because that's where, the opportunities are, hidden. That's where they live. And the second thing that I would do, to, find hidden opportunities is to go where players hang out and ask them questions. So I'd go to the subreddits, that are specifically made for my subgenre, and I'd get involved. And I would ask questions. I would ask people what they would think of, a Bullet Hell roguelike deck building idea. And I try to figure out, their challenges and problems and pain points they have, in general in their genre. So as I read the reviews and, talk to players, I write everything down. And I basically call this, my player insights document. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to gather as much info as I can about what players want and need. And why am I doing this? Is because when you ask questions and write down, what players say, you can use this info, you can use this data to help, create a highly marketable game. Again, I don't want to guess what people want. I don't want to hope what people want. What I want to do is deliberately make sure that, what I think is interesting is also interesting with other people. Also, you want to see if there's any demand for the game, right? If a lot of people say the same thing about a problem they have in their genre, then you can use that info to help, create a game that solves those problems or gives, players what they want that they're not getting from other games or, they don't see in the genre. Okay, so when you get that done, let's move on to step number 3, and that is organize your ideas into a simple product plan that is easy to understand. So the goal is to make a game that sells itself. The goal is to find players looking for you. And the goal is to build, an audience. And one more goal, and that is to find a publisher, right? So to do all of this and to reach your goals, you need to do market research, you need to talk to players, and you also need product planning because these all three are very vital. And these three is what I call the trifecta or the holy trinity. So again, there are market research, talking to players, and product planning. So without these three, game dev is basically guessing and they're basically hoping, that their game will, sell a lot of copies. And without these three, it's going to be very difficult to find a game publisher. So let's finish off the trifecta and get into product planning. So what is basically product planning? I know it's a simple question, but let's unpack it. So product planning is basically taking everything you've learned, in those three or the first two steps, basically market research and talking to players, right? You take all of those two things you've learned and you use that info to help you design and develop a game, basically a game that people want. But you're not coding yet. You're not, working on art assets. You're not doing anything, in terms of production right now. What you'll do is open a Word document or a Google Doc and you'll organize all your thoughts and write down everything so far you've learned in a simple, easy to digest, product plan. And if you're stuck, then here's a great write-up on how to design, a game document, and I'll have the link below, and it's from gamedeveloper.com. So whatever you call it, a product plan, a game design doc, whatever it is, what's important is that you need to organize your ideas and thoughts onto something that is easy to understand, right? All right, so here's a tip that will help you write and design your product plan or your design doc. Be sure to be as concrete and tangible as you can. The reason is if you can't describe your game clearly, concretely, tangibly, then all your future efforts are going to be really hard and they might even fail, right? So for example, if you're too vague and you're abstract, then what you say can mean different things to different people. So for example, say I'm making food, and when I say, hey, have some food, that can mean, many things to many people. But say I told you I'm making pizza, that's a bit better, right? But pizza is still a little too abstract because pizza can mean many things to many people, right? But say I said, a vegan pizza with hot peppers, then it's clear and it's tangible, right? I can actually imagine that. So you want to be as clear, as tangible, and as concrete as you can. And the reason why is because this is how you grab attention. So for example, you're trying to figure out your core gameplay loop, right? And you're having trouble, trying to describe it in a tangible and concrete ways. So to help you out, let's look at, Dome Keeper's Steam capsule description, because this is a great example of what I'm trying to talk about. So what I want you to notice is the last paragraph, the last sentence, and that is there enough time to mine a little deeper and get back to defend before monsters attack your dome, right? So notice that last sentence. So what I'm trying to say here is they could have easily said, risk reward system. We have a really cool risk reward system, but they specifically spelled it out for you. They basically said, dig deeper or run back and defend, right? So in less than 1 second, I can understand the gameplay loop. And so to help you, do the same thing, I call this, little test, the imagine test. And it kind of goes like this. Say I ask you to imagine food. What you think of was very different than what I would think of, or even thousands of other people would think of, right? And that's because, again, food is too vague and too abstract. But say I ask you to imagine, a vegan pizza with hot peppers, then it's not hard to imagine, exactly what I mean. And it's the same thing with your game when you're trying to describe the core gameplay loop or anything about your game. So try to imagine, risk reward system. It's really hard to imagine, what a risk reward system is because it's too vague, it's too abstract. But say I asked you to imagine, dig deep and run back and defend your fort, right? Then in my mind, I can imagine, I can feel, I can see myself even digging and deeper and, getting greedy and then feeling the stress of, running back to my fort and trying to defend it, right? I can actually imagine that, but I can't imagine risk reward system. So when writing your product plan or your design doc, apply the, the imagine test. Can you imagine yourself, basically doing X? So why is it, again, being concrete, tangible, clear, very important? Well, because when it comes to marketing your game, a player is not going to try to figure out what, a risk reward system means. And the more abstract your game sounds, the more generic it sounds, right? Because a lot of games have, a risk reward system. So you need to know how to write and describe your game in a way that is clear, concrete, and tangible. And being tangible now will help you later when you market your game, when you set up your Steam page and describe what your game is, and it'll help you when you will approach publishers too, right? So use what you've learned in, steps 1, market research, and in steps 2, talking to players, and then use all those insights, ideas, discoveries to help you write your product plan or your game design document. And be clear, concrete, and tangible when writing your product plan. All right, onward to step number 4, and that is prototype and test again. Sorry, going to test again with people. Anyway, the reason you're working so hard, on market research, talking to players, and product planning is because, all those activities are the lowest in investment, but give you the highest in return. What I mean is by spending a few weeks on market research, talking to players, and product planning, then you'll know by the end of your efforts if you have a marketable game or not. But what most game devs do, they will, spend money, energy, and time into making a polished or presentable game or a prototype. Then they will go out and see if it's marketable or not, right? You see, most game devs do it backwards. They put all the time and energy up front, and then they test and see if the game is marketable and see if there's a, even a market for it, right? They're essentially putting a lot of investment in time and energy and money, and they might not get a good, return on it, right? But what I'm trying to teach you here is to work your way up slowly and discover if there's a market for your game with the least amount of effort, with the least amount of time and money and put into it, right? I'm trying to show you that the ideation phase, the pre-production phase is the most important part of game development and growing your game studio. And it's the most important part because when you learn if your game idea is marketable, when you learn if there's even demand for your game idea, then you're validating your idea before, spending months or years on a game project that may or may not work. So good job so far. And once you get past the 3 steps, market research, talking to players, and product planning, then now you can start building your prototype. And since you've done, all the hard work in those 3 first steps, you've basically built the scaffolding for your prototype, and you've done a lot of the, the heavy lifting so far. So let me explain exactly what I'm talking about. So 1, you found a market that has high, probability of income. And 2, you talked to players and found out what players want and they need. And you found out what your market is missing and what players want and don't want, basically, generally in their genre. And 3, you use that info to create a design document or a product plan, and you organized all your thoughts onto a single sheet of paper, right? Now you can take all that and then do what you do best, right? And that is, design and develop. So again, use what you've learned in the 3 steps to help you create a game prototype. This is very important because all that work is the foundation of your game. So let's talk about what is a prototype. And again, this is an easy question, but let's unpack it. The prototype is the core of what your game is minus everything else. What your game is when you take away most of the music, the art, and the story details and sound. And what's left, right? It's probably just the gameplay, the core gameplay loop, and maybe a simple story to give it context. Also, a good prototype is self-contained. It's a standalone, complete product. In other words, you constrain your prototype to one level or an area of your game, and you focus on depth rather than length. So don't worry about the details. Your focus is the core idea. But make sure your prototype is a standalone, self-contained, complete product. And so, for example, it's basically your first area, your first level, or first chapter of your game, but it's a complete experience. So let me give you an example of kind of what I'm talking about. Say you're making a cake, right? And all you need to worry about with the cake is the taste and the texture, right? Those are probably the 2 most important things about a cake. And you don't care about the shape, you don't care about the color, you don't care about the icing, you don't care about the filling, design or the sprinkles, or even how many layers the cake has or the presentation. You want the heart and soul of the cake, and that's the taste and the texture. And it's the same with your prototype. What are the 2 or 3 main things about your game, right? So basically the taste and the texture of your game, right? So for example, look at Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the prototype, right? It was basically a 2D, version of the game because they just wanted to get the core feeling of the game, basically the taste and the texture of the game. So now here's the most important part. Remember how I had you talk to, players in step 2? And remember how I had you interact in those communities? So like say Reddit or, a web forum. Well, now that you have some kind of karma in those communities, you'll have an easier time, asking for feedback because you've developed a relationship in that community. And then this is when you can, share your prototype with them, with that community, and do some more player research. And I know you probably don't want to do this, but again, it's very important. So don't worry about how ugly your prototype is, and don't worry about if players, who have no idea what game dev, what the process is. Some people will give you bad feedback because they have no idea what the process is of game dev, and they assume that's your final version, right? But I know this part is scary, and rejection sucks, and hearing bad feedback sucks, and it's hard to tell, the difference between, hateful feedback versus, even negative feedback that is constructive. It's hard to, tell the difference. But sharing your prototype with a small group of players and not game developers is how you validate your idea even more. And again, you want to validate your idea because you don't want to hope that your game will sell, and you want to know that your game will, have a fighting chance when you eventually launch it. Again, this is a low effort strategy that has high potential in return. What I mean is by testing your ideas on a small scale and finding what works and what doesn't will help you create a game that is highly marketable and a game that sells itself. So you're slowly building up, you're validating your game ideas. Also, by testing your prototype this way, it means you can change things fast. Since your prototype is the core, of your game without most of the art and all those big details, then it's a lot easier to iterate and change things faster. And it's a lot easier to change your mind and overhaul major features and things in your game in your prototype than it is to say in a demo or an alpha build. So go back to those communities, go back and talk to those people you've developed a relationship, and show them your prototype, and they'll be glad to help. So for example, I'd go and ask, hey, a few months ago I asked your opinion on my bullet hell with roguelike deck building. I have a prototype done, and I'd like your opinion and hear what you have to say. Here's a link, check it out. All right, let's move on to step number 5, and that is turn your prototype into a polished, tight 10-minute demo. If you want players to join your community, you need something more valuable than, screenshots or, dev log updates, right? And if you want to attract publishers to find your game or to fund your game, you need something more valuable than just ideas and prototypes. You can't just wait 2 years and when your game feels polished or more presentable to start building your community, to start approaching publishers, right? So you need to do this as soon as you can. You need to, approach publishers as soon as you can, and you need to build an audience as soon as you can. And this is why creating a polished, a 10-minute demo is important. So let me explain exactly what I mean. Remember, the idea here is to slowly work your way up, test small, and validate your idea before you spend months or years on a game project. And you want to validate your idea before you go into actual production, because you don't want to spend 2 or 3 years on a game and then start trying to build your community then and trying to find publishers then, right? You need a strategy that will get there faster right now and as soon as you can. So let's get into some examples. So taking the action steps, doing these 4 strategies. So again, let me remind you again: market research, talking to players, product planning or design documents, and creating a prototype and getting player feedback. All these 4 will give you the highest probability of building a community and finding a publisher, or even, if you want, crowdfunding. But if game devs spend months or years and wait until they feel, their game is polished, is, presentable enough to start approaching publishers or players, then they're basically gambling, that their years of hard work is going to pay off. They're kind of hoping that their years will pay off. Because what happens is they believe that as long as they have a polished game or demo or prototype first, then that's when they will get out there and start talking to players and start talking to publishers. But this is a gamble because the idea hasn't been tested first. The idea hasn't been validated. Just because a game dev has a polished demo or a prototype or whatever, it's not enough to grab a player's attention or grab the attention of a publisher. You first need to validate your ideas as early as you can and slowly build up to an actual creation of your product, of your game. And that's what we're trying to do here. That's what I'm trying to teach you here, is that you can't wait years for something presentable and have something polished. You need something that is valuable and polished right now as soon as you can. So if you want your game to grab a player's attention, and if you want to attract the attention of publishers and get crowdfunding, you need to have something of high value. And that demo is one of the most valuable marketing assets you can create. So what is a demo? Again, the question seems simple, but there's a lot more to it. A demo is taking all your ideas and concepts and turning them into a complete product. It's a self-contained, standalone, complete product that a player can use and interact with. In a self-contained, standalone game demo is more valuable than, a half-done, semi-complete loose alpha build, right? And a demo is more valuable than screenshots or trailers or devlogs and updates. So why is a game demo so valuable? Well, because people have, a hard time taking loose, semi-complete abstract ideas or images and connecting the dots to an end product. So for example, a player will have a hard time seeing your vision of your game, the end product, by just, playing your alpha build. Their mind can't connect the dots and looking at, unfinished assets and seeing the final version and what would it look like. The mind can't do that. That's because, they're the consumer and you're the producer. You put hours and time into your game and they didn't. They can't see what you can see, right? And it's the same thing with screenshots and trailers. A player will have a hard time, understanding your cool new feature by just looking at a screenshot. It makes perfect sense to you why, the feature is cool and fun. But again, being a producer, you're basically living in your game. And a player they're a consumer, right? They might spend 10 seconds looking at your screenshot, but 10 seconds isn't enough for a player to fully understand the feature and let it sink in, right? Completely, like you understand it. And people don't have the time or brain energy to try to figure things out and why your game is fun and exciting and worth playing, right? They won't connect the dots. But if you have a tight 10-minute demo, all the mental work is done for the player, right? And all the player has to do is sit back and experience the fun and the excitement and emotions that get them hooked. That's why a demo is more valuable than screenshots, trailers, and vlogs and updates and even alpha builds, right? Demos are more valuable because it's the fastest and easiest way for a player to experience your game. With screenshots, trailers, even alpha builds, there's too much abstraction between the player and your game. Like I said, players can't have that same feeling you have when you play your game by just looking at screenshots, trailers, or reading your devlog. But with a demo, all that abstraction is gone, and that player gets to experience your game and actually feel what your game can offer and feel what you feel when you play your game, right? So to help you make a tight 10-minute demo that is valuable as possible, here's some tips. So the first one is don't bury the lead. You want the best parts of your game right up front. So this means your demo isn't a tutorial and your demo isn't basically a lore dump or a story dump. And don't make the player wait too long to get to the best parts of your game. keep it short, 5, 10, 15 minutes long, because the longer your demo is, the player might not come back because they basically got everything they wanted from your game. And it has to be a standalone, complete product. So treat it like a finished game, but it's only like one level or one area or the first chapter. Also, polish it by focusing on depth and not length. So polish the first level or the first chapter and treat it, like I said, again, like it's like your final game. So to give you, a concrete example, imagine, Witcher 3, one of the quests, the Bloody Baron quest. And if you ever played that, it's probably the best, quest. Imagine that being the demo. So you jumped in, there's a quick tutorial, it's like 2 or 3 minutes of the gameplay. You get a full, complete experience. There's a middle, or there's a start, a middle, and an end. And you play that game and it's, 15 minutes long. That the Bloody Baron quest is pretty long, but I would, make it shorter, make it 10, 15 minutes. But that's just an example. Imagine having a demo like that. A player jumps in, gets a full, complete experience, and they finish and they're like, they just want to see more, right? So that's what I mean when I say a complete standalone experience. And this is basically what Hollow Knight did too, right? They made a level or maybe 2 levels. They polished that first level or the first few levels as if it was their, their final product. And they put all their focus and time into that demo, and all their effort went into depth, not length. Also, Hollow Knight did kind of something counterintuitive, and you could only play the demo if you were a Kickstarter backer. It wasn't available to anybody. And this is important, and I'll show you why this is important later. But your demo is your most valuable marketing asset. And again, the intuitive strategy is to give it out as freely as possible as you can to as many people as you can. But like Hollow Knight, you can leverage your demo in a better way than just giving it out freely. And I'll explain to you how to do that next. So let's move on to step 6, and that is building a community using your demo as a reason to join, right? Okay, so how in step 2 I had you talk to players, and how in step 4 you also had to test your prototype on players too, right? Well, you didn't know it at the time, but as you were doing this, you were building a community. As you talk to people and ask them about what they hate about their genre and ask them about what they want and don't want. And at the same time, you're, talking about your game and how you're trying to fix those problems in your genre. Then that person you're talking to is going to, want to follow up. They're going to listen. They're going to perk up. So why does this work? Why does talking to people work? How does it get them to perk up? Well, because if your game can help solve people's problems and get them what they want when no other game is, giving them that option, then players are going to perk up and notice you. They're going to notice you're trying to do something different, that your game is not like another, copycat game, and you're trying to, improve their, favorite genre, and you're giving them what they want that they're not getting, right? And so since you've done your market research and you know what players want and don't want, and you made a tight 10-minute demo, then all you have to do is, show it to them, talk about it. You don't have to sell it to them. And you don't have to convince people, and you don't have to, do some hard marketing, right? Again, all you have to do is show it to them because you've done the research. But your job isn't done yet, and you can't just, start jumping into production just right now. You still need to build a community because it'll help you at your game launch, and it'll help you find a publisher later on too. So to help you build your community, your demo is your best marketing asset. And you might be asking, where's the best platform to build a community? And I would say that the technology doesn't really matter, right? It can be on Discord, it can even be on TikTok or your own subreddit or even email newsletter. Again, the technology doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a centralized spot where your fans hang out, right? And if you really want, to know which platform does the best, I would say email is one of the best because you have more control over the message and you have a better chance of players, will see your message. So for example, you have 1,000 email newsletter followers and you sent out an email to them once a week. You know that at least 1,000 people, will at least get that in their inbox. I mean, not all of them will open it, but at least you sent out 1,000 and they got it in their inbox. But say you have 1,000 subreddit followers and you posted something once a week, you have no idea if all 1,000 followers have visited that subreddit that week and let alone seen your post. At least with email, you have more control because you know that it's going to get in their inbox, at least get in their inbox, right? Another great place to centralize your community is Discord. It's a good place because unlike email, people can interact and there's more activity in one single spot. And they can, like I said, they can interact with each other. But again, the technology doesn't matter. What matters is that you have something of value to offer somebody so they join your community. That's the number one thing, is to have something of value. Also, what else doesn't matter is the size of your community. What matters more is the quality of your followers. So in other words, say you have 1,000 diehard fans join your Discord and they're highly active. That's way better than having, 10,000 Discord followers who, rarely talk and, interact with each other. So again, the quality of your fans is more important than the quantity. So how does your demo fit in all of this? Well, all your marketing activity should now be focused on advertising your demo. In other words, every content you post on Reddit, YouTube, TikTok should be about your demo, because your demo is your number one marketing asset. So you want to leverage your demo to help grow your community. So how do you do this? How do you leverage your demo? Well, remember, all marketing efforts should be getting as much attention on your demo as possible. But here's a little strategy, and that is, don't give out your demo too freely. Remember how I told you about Hollow Knight's demo? Well, the only way you could play it is if you were a Kickstarter backer. So use the same kind of strategy in a way where, if a player wants to play your demo, then they need to join your Discord or sign up to your newsletter. I know it's counterintuitive to not give away your demo. And of course, you want as many people as possible to play it. And besides, people hate, paywalls. That's true, but people also devalue what is given to them freely. A demo that, anybody can have access to is perceived as less valuable than a demo that, only a select few have access to. And by putting, basically a little speed bump in accessing your demo, you're going to grab, the high quality diehard fans. You basically want to, pre-qualify your followers, because remember, the quality of your fans is more important than the quantity. And by, pre-qualifying your fans, you're rewarding them, right? And they feel like they're in a select group. And these are the fans that will spread word of mouth for you and, basically give you free marketing. And I'm not saying, you hide your demo like this forever. As your community grows, as, word of mouth spreads, that's when you can open up the, floodgates and put out your demo, say on your Steam page where anyone can have access to it. But not right now. Right now, when you're building your core audience, when you're building your core fan base, you want to be selective. You want to only attract people will love your game and are willing to join your community and, want to play your demo. And you kind of want to eliminate all those tire kickers, those people that you just want free stuff, right? So now that you have a community of, say, 1,000 people and they're very excited and they're, buzzing and they're interacting, then you're ready for step number 7. And that is approach publishers with your polished demo and the community that is vouching for you. So let me tell you a quick story. So my first startup attracted, the biggest organizations, companies, and businesses in Canada. But before I got huge, I started small. I first attracted residents, and some of those residents had small businesses, right? And then word of mouth spread throughout that business community, and I started landing more, small businesses. And then those small businesses also worked with larger businesses. And as word of mouth spread in that community, I slowly started landing, multi-million-dollar businesses, and in some cases, or in one case, a multi-billion-dollar company, right? But the moral of the story is that if I approached, these big companies first, these organizations and companies first, without having a community, without having any credibility, they wouldn't even talk to me, right? But since I had a small following and I built some credibility and the community vouched for me, that's how I, landed those big clients, and that's how they took notice of me, right? And it wasn't much. I didn't have 1 million clients. I had maybe 300, 400 small clients, and that was enough for me to grab, attention of these huge companies, or organizations. So what does this have to do with you finding a publisher? Well, if you want to land a publisher, you can't approach them, with a game idea. You can't approach them with an alpha build, right? Just simple, building blocks of your product, right? You need social proof that your idea will make money and that your idea is wanted by players, right? So that's why I had you slowly work your way up from, market research to a polished demo. And every step of the way, you were validating those ideas. But what most game devs do is they skip those first steps and start working on their game. And then after a year or two, they make sure that the game is, polished enough for them to show to other players. Then that's when they, present their game to the public or, publishers to get feedback. And this is dangerous because the only measure these game devs have is polish, right? They assume that just because their game is polished enough that this is what will get them attention. But polish in itself is not what gets the attention of players or gets the attention of publishers, right? These game devs haven't gone through the process of validating their ideas, and without validating their ideas, they're just guessing and they're hoping that their polished game, will get them attention. So if you want to build a successful game company that supports your life financially, you can't hope and you can't guess. You need to validate ideas every step of the way. And that's why I put a lot of time and effort explaining it in those first 4 or 5 steps. And this is very important because this is what publishers want to see. They want to see that your idea is already validated. And a publisher can't see profits by just looking at, design documents or screenshots or trailers or even an alpha build or even a demo, right? But a publisher can see profits if you come to them with a highly polished demo and a community, that is buzzing, that is very active and is vouching for you. And like I said, it's better to have 1,000 diehard fans that are really active in your Discord than to have, 10,000 inactive users. And you can use this to your advantage when you pitch your game to publishers. You can show them how, much activity your community has, how much buzz there is, and how much passion your community has for your game, right? So it's not enough just to have a polished demo. You need validation that your game will be, profitable. And by leveraging your community, by showing, potential publishers that you have the backing of a passionate group of people, then they will perk up and listen to you when you approach them. Actually, if you did your job right, publishers will approach you. There's nothing better than seeing a huge community talk about your game and, getting that buzz. That there's a lot of people are attracted to that. Okay. But at this point, you might be saying, but what if I can't find a publisher? Or what if I don't want a publisher and rather get crowdfunding, right? Or you might be asking or saying, but I still don't know how to find players. Or you might be thinking or asking, what am I supposed to do, right? Make a polished demo and players will flock to me by magic. Just because I have a demo doesn't mean everyone's going to find me, right? Or you might be thinking, I'm stuck and have no idea where to begin. So if this is you and you're stuck, there's a link in the description below. And after watching and reading that, you'll get more in-depth, more advanced tips showing you how to make a game that is marketable, and how to find players to join your community, and how to get, your game funded by publishers or by players. So what should you do now? I say get the blueprint. So remember, the number one reason games fail is because somebody made a product that the market didn't want. A game dev, made a game they wanted to make without finding out if a market wants it too. And my goal in this article, in this video, is to give you a simple, basic roadmap you can use to help you avoid your game, failing and help your game company grow in profits and income. And I want to help you develop a game so that when you launch it, it makes enough profits so that your game studio survives in the long term and you can start making new games and, keep that, momentum going. But in order for you and I to get there, you need to take action right now. And I can show you, the way, but ultimately you are responsible for the success of your game studio. So to help you, take the first baby steps, I've made a blueprint you can download here or in the description below. And I call it How to Start a Game Company Step-by-Step Action Blueprint. And in the blueprint, you'll get a summary of all the 7 simple steps. Plus, I will walk you through with action steps you can easily take. So go download the blueprint right now and take the first step into growing your game studio and finding players so they join your community, and find a publisher so they you get funded and you don't have to worry about budgets. And if you want more advanced tips, more in-depth techniques, then also in the description below, there's a link for that too. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for watching. Again, my name is Darius, and good luck with your game dev journey. See you later. Bye.